Welcome to another edition of PENSDOWN. We call this program PENSDOWN because the pen is the journalist's tool. And here they drop it and become the newsmakers, not the reporters or presenters. Today we are traveling to the Eastern African country of Kenya, and we are touching base with a freelance data journalist who is based in Kenya, the Eastern African country. My guest is Nelly Madegwa. Thanks for joining me and welcome to PENSDOWN.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here and be part of your program.
Right. Journalism, a lot of people say it's a calling, not a profession. Do you see it as a profession or a calling?
Uh, um, yeah, I'll say it is a calling, but of course, even in pursuing a calling, you need to be very professional. You know, there are some rules that you need to sort of make sure you adhere to, or you're not breaking their code of ethics that govern your work. Yeah, so it is both. Like like it is. People are called. I think you can say it's sort of a calling. You're sort of drawn to it, and then when you get into it, you start learning. They're actually called code of ethics, or sort of rules that you need to sort of operate within. Yeah, so I'll say it is both. Yeah, the two intersect as you pursue it.
Right. How did you discover the journalist in you?
So I'm not the one who discovered. Someone else did. I think. Yeah, I never really knew I could write yeah, I'm still surprised I can actually write as much as I do now. Yeah, I think I was watching television someday, and they had covered the story on rep. It was one of the mainstream medias, and the way they had covered it, they focused more on the survivor, and the perpetrator sort of just fell off. So very little was talked about this perpetrator, and the story, like the act of rape, like it had sort of just happened to the survivor by itself. Like there was no other person linked to it. And I think I was very angry about it, and I went to rant about it on my WhatsApp status. And a friend of mine who was at the moment already writing, reached out and were like, pitch this to the elephant. I knew the elephant because I was reading their content already, but I didn't know what a pitch was because I didn't study journalism. And then so yeah, she took me through what a pitch looked like and what it had. And then I ended up pitching, the frustrations, like sort of how I'll want like a story to be covered when it's like around sexual assault. And yeah, the elephant agreed. They accepted the pitch, and then I was told to draft 2,000 words. I had never written those many words. I didn't know how you would actually do that. Yeah. So I struggled to actually come up with 2,000 words. Like I really struggled. And I think I sent in the article like just a few minutes to the deadline. And yeah, that's how sort of my journalism journey began. Yeah.
Okay, so it's you birthed it out of an anger you had in respect of a report you saw, which to you did not satisfy the issues of balance and fairness.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. I didn't like how it had been covered, like the issue, how it had been covered, and it was an issue I was so personally connected to, because I see a lot of people experience it, and I'd actually also experienced it, and so I was like, yeah, this is how I want this story to be told, and so yeah, so I told that story in a way that I want it to be told. Okay, I ranted about it, and someone said I should pitch it. So yeah, so I pitched it, and I did tell that story in a way that I felt this is how, as a survivor, I want this story to be told. So that was my first story. Yeah.
So how long has it been since this anger led you into a profession?
So yeah, the first article I published it in 2019. So it's been 2019. Yeah, so it's been yeah, we are now like 4 years, so this is the 5th year of me writing, but I didn't really do a lot of writing in 2020, so yeah, so
Yeah,
so
obviously
it's
a lot of us were on lockdown, so
yeah,
getting the information was quite difficult.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so 2019 to date, what assignment stands out for you as the most challenging?
Oh. The most challenging. Um, Actually, I'll say the first one that I ever did, because I was the subject of the story. So
Okay.
the stories I'm doing now, different people, I'm telling other people's stories, and I think it's, while it's hard to tell other people's stories, of course, you need to make sure that their voices are being heard as they want them to be heard, like the messages are not being lost. But being the subject of the story was very hard for me, because I was sort of telling a truth that people didn't really know about myself, and a truth that I was still struggling with. So it was a very hard assignment, I think, for me, because it was the first me, and sort of narrating it to the world, and of course the fear of judging ever telling the story. So it was very hectic for me to tell that particular story. But of course, I think over time I've really struggled with jumping. So from that was like a reflection piece. You're telling a story from your own point of view, and then I've transitioned into explanatory journalism, data journalism. I'm now transitioning also into investigative journalism. So I think every transition, it's always very challenging to tell different stories in a different way. But I'll say that the first story was the most challenging, honestly. I really struggled with that. I actually thought I wouldn't really, yeah. Yeah.
Down up here in West Africa, there is a lot of attrition in journalism. A lot of our qualified colleagues are leaving. Some of them are moving into public relations, corporate communications, and various fields where they'll be welcomed. I don't know if there is a similar situation in Kenya where you find yourself. If there is, what do you think is accounting for this? Why are we losing so many fine materials?
That's I think it's happening everywhere. Yeah, it's very interesting to hear it's happening in Ghana too, because yes, we've had a lot of journalists here in Kenya. Actually, we even have like a recent one from a mainstream media transitioning into a public relation job, and journalists joining public relations. So of course, people will say they're trying to pursue different ways, or maybe different career paths. But I think what I've had over and over is the pay in journalism is not really there's the issue of I think sort of controlling your voice. Like people are feeling like they're not able to actually say what they want to say. So like your work needs to go through several checks, and by the time it's done, it's not really what you produce. So I think some journalists are struggling with that. And then of course, I think also greener pastures. I think that is also a factor. So I think those will be the two main issues that I think I'll attribute to why journalists are sort of transitioning from being journalists to public relation communication specialist, that kind of thing. I mean, journalism as an industry has been having quite a bit of challenges. Like I think for like in Kenyan mainstream media, we've had a lot of journalists being laid off from mainstream media revenue source. So most of the journalists have been transitioning to other different roles that are not really journalists, sort of related, communication specialists and public relations, but they're not really journalism. And every time that happens, the conversation I've seen on Twitter is people actually feel really, really bad, especially journalists who are very passionate about what they do. They feel really bad to have lost such an incredible talent to another field. Yeah.
Does journalism pay?
I'm a freelance. I'll say yes, it does pay. Yeah, but before it pays, there are so many challenges, honestly. Like I do freelance work, and to get a really good project, you really need to do quite a bit. And I'm a freelance who does not really have a background in journalism. So for people to actually trust that you actually can deliver, it's very hectic. It's very hectic. And I think for those okay, for other journalists who are sort of employed, I think the ones I've interacted with, that they'll be like, the pay is very little and the work is a lot, and they're just like so many challenges happening right now. Yes, I'll say it pays. For some people, it actually does pay. But I think before it actually gets to the point where it's paying, yeah, there are a lot of hurdles you need to actually get through for you to start getting projects that actually pay you enough money, like money that you're very comfortable with pursuing it. So I think I've seen so many journalists sort of juggling other things to sort of just um, complement what they get from journalism. But yeah, but I think for those who are really passionate about it, they sort of stick through it. Yeah, even with the challenges. Yeah, like for me, I while I do other things, I honestly do not know how that will look like. Yeah, so even with the challenges of getting grants for projects, pitching projects, and getting you continue to do that because you cannot actually you cannot imagine yourself not doing that. So yes, you do other things to complement the projects or seasons when you're not having projects going on. Yeah, but as you said, if it's a calling, then it's something you're very strongly drawn to, and it sort of gives your life a purpose, something like that. I tell people that I do not really see journalism for me as work. It's just sort of it's something I'm sort of born to do. Like it's the same way you wake up and breathe and live. So for me, journalism is also part of that, because there are always stories all over around me to tell, and it's very hard to sort of blind yourself to them. So yeah. So it does pay. There are people who actually make money from tourism, but yeah, but it takes quite a bit to get there.
Now, being a freelance journalist can be challenging in several ways. I don't know how yours is. For some freelancers, they pitch to any media house they deem appropriate for the kind of story idea they have. And for those that may be interested, they go ahead, put it together, and get it published. A freelancer gets paid as the story is published. That is one thing. You don't have the assurance of a monthly salary. Now, that even makes it much more challenging. As a freelancer, what has been some of the most heartbreaking times you have endured in respect of pitching, getting story public, sometimes disappointing incidents?
Yeah. Okay. So disappointing incidents. I think first I will not mention the paper, but people are like, you'll get more better exposure if you pitch and publish with mainstream media. And I was like, okay, that's good. I mean, I'll get paid, and then I'll also get like people actually get to know me. But when I did, they told me they do not pay. So I will put in work into a really good story, and then it will get published, but then I will not get paid. And they're like, yes, we're a big publication, so we're sort of giving you sort of free airtime. And I was like, yeah, that won't really work. That won't work. That won't really work.
Yeah.
And so I stopped. So I was like, yeah, I will not really do this. And then the other thing is, because you're freelance, the people you pitch to, even when they do accept your story, sometimes you have to really wait for, when they feel it's best for their publication to put out the story. So you can have your story. Of course, you don't get paid until that story gets published. So if your story is sitting with this publication for like 2 months, 3 months, it means you are not getting paid until that story gets published. And then the other thing is accreditation. Okay, so I do not have accreditation. from them. And then that means that even if first wanted to get into an event, that mostly most of these events, some fellowships, actually most fellowships, they need you to have that accreditation to apply for some opportunities, some grants. They need you to have that accreditation to apply for them. So I miss out on those opportunities because I do not have this accreditation, because I'm a freelance journalist with no background in journalism. And even though I've been producing work for like the last 4 years, apparently it doesn't really matter. And then also because of an article I published last year, and I didn't really know where to get help because I'm not attached to this, journalism organizations in my country. And so I had to sort of suffer through that on my own and figure out where to get help from other different people. We face these challenges and learn through them. So in Kenya, but in other different countries that actually offer anywhere, like across the world. Yeah.
There is a practice where we have politicians and politically exposed persons owning media houses, political ownership of the media. Is it a good practice? Is that a healthy practice, or we are sitting on a time bomb? Is there any cause for alarm?
Oh yeah, we are definitely. Oh, it's like we had elections the other year in 2022, and there was that narrative of politically exposed person or politicians having shares or sort of interest in particular media houses, and how that influenced the coverage of elections or particular candidates. And I think because of that, I've seen quite a bit of distrust in audiences consuming media. Yeah. So when you cover a particular aspect, you have people pushing this narrative that you've been paid to do this, or you're a supporter of a particular politician. And so the audience no longer feel that journalism is a public good. Yeah. Because now with the interests and with media stations and journalists sort of having this interactions with politicians and politically exposed person, people are feeling like they cover news in a way that fits the politician's interest and not the citizens. And so and I think that's one of the reasons even now in Kenya we're having like the audiences are not consuming news as much as they used to, and it's because of that distrust that come with what you just said. So for us, it's already a bomb that sort of has been, has gone off. Yeah. And I think media houses are really trying to get back the trust of their audiences.
Social media is a big player in journalism today and a major influence. From where you sit, what exactly is social media's role in journalism today? How is it affecting the practice of journalism?
So I'll start with the good. So social media amplifies, what, stories that we cover, journalists and even media houses, they amplify it to like audiences that we couldn't reach before. And a lot of people actually get to view them, and we even have discussions with different audiences, something that we couldn't have before. So it in a way it has connected people around this too. So I could be reading a story and having discussions about a story published in German, and someone in German, actually my second story, I had someone from German reading it and commenting, and we even had a project together based on that story. So it has really helped over time. But then the other problem social media has contributed to that's affecting journalism or making journalism a bit difficult is that spread of misinformation and disinformation. As it spread the good news, it's also spreading the lies, or sort of changing messages and spreading it at ways and speeds in which journalists we're really struggling to catch up and sort of counter it. And by the time you're even fact checking an article and putting it out there, everyone already believes the lie to be true. So those two big aspects, while it helps to really amplify this news and all that, it has really played a role in spreading fake news, disinformation, misinformation on some very critical aspects, health issues. We had that with COVID, this misinformation and disinformation spreading about, effects of the vaccine, if the virus is true. So as a journalist, as you're coming to counteract this particular narrative, people already believe something else, and journalists were actually sort of at struggled with that, and even some were even bullied online for
There is a practice across several countries in Africa. You go for events or you interview some prominent newsmaker, and afterwards the person hands you some money as a thank you. People call it transport. Various countries have their own names. At the end of events, you see journalists being handed some envelopes with money in it. In Ghana, we call it Sole, which is the short form for solidarity. In Nigeria, they call it brown envelope. Cameroon calls it the brown envelope or gombo. In Liberia, they call it professional services or cattle. Down in Malawi, they call it logistics. There are various names for it. Is that a practice in Kenya? And what is the name for it? Well, after you tell me the name, if it is a let me know what your thoughts are on it.
Okay, so I've had, of course, the brown envelope is also, it's called here the brown envelope, and some people also call it facilitation. You're being facilitated to
wow.
that kind of thing. And others call it, others. So the facilitation came in a bit late to sort of sanitize the brown envelope. So facilitation is the better name. Yeah, we have it here in Kenya. Yes, it's a practice here. It's been here for quite some time. I honestly do not think it's going away. Yeah.
But what do you think of it? Professionally, what are your thoughts on it?
Oh, my thoughts on it, man. Okay. So of course, when the journalists who've been facilitated to do such things, they'll be like, we are being aided to reach the place and cover the cover or have this interview, so they're just helping us do our work. For freelance journalists, they're like, or even the ones who employ us, they're just facilitating, aiding me to do the work. And then when they refer to it as facilitation, so the brown envelope is the one that's frowned upon, because when we see that, when we talk about the brown envelope, narratives I've had is you're being paid to sort of feed a particular narrative about this particular politician, or sort of tell a story that they agree with. So it's people see it as sort of being bought, whether you're being facilitated or being given a brown envelope. People see it as your voice is being bought. So you're not like speaking your point of view, but you're saying someone else, and you're saying what's sort of favorable for them. And I think that makes journalism a bit problematic. I think it sort of compromises you, and of course it makes it harder for audiences to actually trust what you're saying. So that practice, it brings out issues of, how authentic is what you're saying, your integrity too. So I'll say, if people can, they'll rather just avoid it, because journalism is a public good. We tell the stories for our audiences and ordinary citizens, and it's very important that they actually trust this the stories that we tell and consume them, because some of the stories that we tell are very important and very critical to our daily life. So I'll say the practice is not good for journalism. It's not.
In fact, this topic remains one of the most controversial among journalists themselves. Opinions are so divided and everybody is so opinionated. Nobody feels their side is wrong or their opinion is wrong. Yes. Those who are adherents or those who patronize that they defend it very well. In fact, one colleague journalist from Nigeria said it's a crucial, that brown envelope is crucial for survival. So we shouldn't demonize it, because without it, a lot of journalists will go home hungry.
Yeah, and they have a point there. But then, even if it's crucial to survival, what perception does it come with? Yeah, it ruins your reputation. It puts, that kind of thing. So yeah. So then, yeah.
Let me pick your thought on licensing of journalists. Should we license journalists like we license lawyers or medical doctors or whatever it is?
Now, if you want to license journalists, I feel I will not be licensed. and I think I know so many people who do not have background in journalism. But they are doing some amazing journalism work. Most of my mentors actually didn't study journalism, yet they're doing some really incredible work. They've been recognized internationally. So yeah, so the licensing bit, I think, yes, you can sort of do it, but make sure you're not being very stringent. Like, you need to have studied journalism for you to practice it. So people who are freelance like me, maybe there's sort of a process that they could open up in such a way that you can also be included. Yeah, because you see, like, if they do licensing as they do for lawyers, for lawyer, they need to study law, then pass the bar, then you are a lawyer. Now for journalism, if it will have to have the same route, then they will lock out some really amazing people, and people like me who are like very passionate about, telling stories. Yeah, so it could be something that they could do, but then they sort of just figure out a way to be inclusive of people who didn't study journalism but have been practicing journalism or want to practice journalism. Yeah.
So the summary of your thoughts are these. Yes, we can license, but don't tie it to professional training. Am I right? Am I right?
Yes.
Okay.
like the
Great.
professional. I've done professional journalism training.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's great.
I've just not studied it as a school, like as an undergrad.
As an
Yeah,
academic
but I have
program.
done
Okay.
professional training,
Okay.
journalism training.
Okay, but
Yes,
this argument about you have to go to school to learn journalism by all means before you practice. I see journalism as an art, it's a skill. And skills you learn by doing. So over time, as you practice, you become perfect. Of course, there are ethical injunctions and other things, and that is where the capacity building takes care of. So I really do not feel we should cast things in stone in such a manner. Otherwise, we will be depriving the craft of very, very talented materials.
Yeah.
If we are to go back into time, 7 years, will you still choose journalism or you do something else?
Yeah, actually I would. I hope I'll discover it by my own and I'll get into it sooner. Yeah, telling stories. Yeah, but telling stories, I enjoy telling stories. Right now, I play around with data sets to tell stories from them, and it's the most thrilling, exciting thing I have ever done. And just having interviews with people and hearing the perspective on things, it's beautiful. I love reading and journalism. Interacting with people is also sort of a way of me consuming information from other people. So I think, yeah, going back in time 7 years, I will still choose to do journalism, even though I struggle to call myself a journalist. So I'll say something like writing because I didn't study journalism. So I'll be like, no, I'm a writer. I'll be like, I'm a data storyteller. That's sort of my version of a data journalist. But yeah, if I go back 7 years in time, I'll still want to tell stories in what now people know as journalism. Yeah.
Let me take you back to social media. Social media has created richer bloggers in Africa than richer journalists. But traditionally, public information and dissemination platforms are better manipulated by people who have the skill as journalists. What is it that we are doing wrong? Which is why people without such skill are making a fortune out of it while we gather pennies and dimes.
Okay. I think what bloggers have figured out is what people want to consume, and I think how they want to consume it. And it's also how fast they're able to put out stories about issues online. Yeah, mostly online. And of course, for them, they're not really limited by some rules. I've had bloggers, being told they're going. I've seen bloggers being sued in Kenya. So for them, they don't really need to worry about who this is going to hurt, who this is going to, they don't have to worry about some of
They
the
don't
ethics that I
observe
think people who
ethical
practice journalism
injunctions.
have.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that makes them, you can be very sensational. And we know how, even I will tap on something that looked very sensational, to sort of read about it. And so they have sort of figured out how to fit that. And people are always looking for what is the next trendy, scandalous thing happening. And that's what bloggers do, the next trendy, that kind of thing. And people want to consume that. And for us journalists, we actually cannot do that because it breaks so many rules, Sometimes they'll put up information that's not even verified. For you, even a story, even if it's very hot and all that, but then the information is not verified, you cannot publish it. So you need to wait for that information to be verified for it to be put out. A blogger doesn't need to wait. They can just put it up, and then when they realize it's false, sometimes they actually don't even pull it down. But for you, you realize if you're to do that, then you will suffer, your reputation will suffer. And I don't think you'll be able to actually practice journalism again if you're to do that. So there are these roles that we have to go through, which of course are very important to actually produce material that bloggers do not really adhere to some of these roles. And so it makes it very easier for them to navigate how to sort of give content to citizens of the audience. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
now you are a data journalist, and access to information is at the heart of what you do. In Ghana, where I am now, in Accra, Ghana, we have freedom of information bill, but sometimes public office holders are hesitant about giving out information. Have you had challenges accessing information where your work comes in? Maybe you are doing this, you want to verify this, you want to confirm this, and there are bottlenecks, some of them deliberate, put on your way just to frustrate you.
Yeah. I mean, I think yes, access of information. It's a law in our country. We have like in the law, like we are we are allowed to access information. With to use it, for public consumption. But then of course, some of this information that you're looking for, if it's not good, especially for government spaces, they are sort of bureaucratic processes. You need to send emails, make calls, be taken through, and then you'll be told the person can only be available in a month's time, but your story needs to go out. Sometimes you need data for a particular story for your country, but then your country cannot, like some of the databases, they haven't updated this data yet, and they cannot give it to you. And so you have to use data that world, like for me, I do a lot of health stories, so you have to use WHO, because the data will not be ready, or the data that is ready is like for 5 years ago. And for data journalism, we usually say data needs to be less than for it to actually make sense for the context you're telling it.
Right.
Yeah, so we always have that. In as much as we have the right to access information, there's so many processes, especially information, or to get that information verified. You need to write emails, write letters, do calls, like go through 5 different people. Yeah, so even if you knew this person, they'll tell you, I'm not allowed to speak on this particular topic. You need to reach out to this person and this person and this person before I can actually comment on the issue. And yes, sometimes the story can't wait that long, and sometimes I think they just the waiting period. They'll tell you they respond in 14 days or 21 days. It's a bit too long for you to wait, and so you need to figure out a different way to tell the story with different data. Yeah, so that's always a problem. I think it's a problem, and I think every other journalist, mostly in African countries, they struggle with that.
Are you doing journalism for life?
I'll say yes. I think maybe the way of telling stories will evolve and change in different forms, but I think I'll always tell stories. Yeah, different formats, different ways, but it will. Yeah, sorry for the interruption. Yeah, so I think I will I'll want to tell stories till the day sort of I'm not able to, sort of physically or health-wise. Yeah, but for as long as I'm very healthy, I'll always want to tell stories. Different forms. Maybe the next time I won't be writing, maybe I'll be speaking or something, but yeah, audio or something.
Let me find out. In the line of duty, have you ever been approached with a bribe, either in monetary form or material form, to compromise something you were doing?
Let me see. No. I am yet to go through that situation. I hope it never happens. Yeah, no, that hasn't happened. Yeah.
The field of journalism also has a lot of landmines. Those of you who love to dig out information, sometimes you may want to venture where angels fear to tread, and that is where the troubles begin to come up. Threats to life in the line of duty. Have you ever been threatened in the line of duty?
Yes. Last year I was doing a story. Not last year, not last year, 2022. I was doing a particular story, and I actually didn't finish it because, yeah, I was receiving these calls where I'll pick, and every time I'll go out in the field, sort of collect information during in the evening, I'll start receiving strange calls where you pick and no one says something on the other end. There's just breathing, and then yeah. So and then it felt like I was being surveilled in a way. And yeah, it made me very anxious. I actually had to I actually talked to my editor, the editor I was working with, and I told them I'm not able to go on with this particular story because it was a very sensitive issue, and I had to stop. So yeah, so that has happened, and of course the emotional toil that comes with doing journalism. I covered quite a bit on COVID vaccines, and I've done quite a bit on misinformation on different types of vaccines, and I always seem to meet anti-vaxxers while I do that. And so there's always this hate being thrown at you on your article comment section. You're being told you're being paid to push that particular narrative. And yeah, that can actually, yeah, on the various occasions when it has happened, it has really put me in a very bad space mentally. So yeah, that has happened. Yeah.
This accusation of a journalist has been paid to do something. I'm waiting for the day the first person will actually identify the paymaster. I think we need to one day put some of these people on the spot because it's becoming one too many. Really. Every day somebody has been paid, but the paymasters remain faceless. It's okay. So if today or maybe in the next few years you have a child of yours or a mentee walk up to you that, oh, I want to go into journalism, is the person going to get your blessing? If they will, what is that advice you give them as to how better to start off than you did?
How better to start off than I did. I always thought the best way to start off is to go to school and study journalism, actually. But I think it's to get a mentor, someone who's been in the space for and understand it. Sorry, another people calling me in the afternoon. Yeah. So yeah, I'll actually ask them to get a mentor as soon as possible.
Okay.
I took some time to actually like attach myself strongly to a mentor who will like walk me through my ideas and how to tell my stories. And then another thing is to do, I do, lately I've been doing, I think, yeah, so I think from 2021, I've been trying to do a lot of online courses. Most of them are free. Some of them I apply for scholarships to be able to do them. So if you've not studied journalism as I have, then try to do those courses. And another thing is read or consume information in different ways, and just not just consume journalism for your country, but consume how journalism is being practiced in different places, you know, in West Africa, in South Africa, North Africa, and in other continents. Like, try to consume. It sort of helps you to sort of be at par with how journalism is being practiced across the world, and not sort of to just consume the media in your own home. So I think I'll also tell them that, it really helps you to understand how stories are being told and how audiences sort of perceives different ways of storytelling. Yeah.
My final question. Yeah. You have mentioned the fact that you are not a trained journalist a number of times. Now I want to put you on the spot. Does the absence of training, academic as a journalist, question your capacity? Does it make you feel inadequate? Or it is purely the psychological warfare the others are waging, which is getting to you?
Okay. I'm not gonna use my words here, but I've been told it's what I have is imposter syndrome. I've always felt in a way it makes me inadequate. That is very true. I think I struggle with that all the time. All the time. I struggle with that. But my therapist says it's imposter syndrome. My mentor says it's imposter syndrome, that I'm actually good. I've actually, because I've learned, because I began with reflection, just telling stories from my own point of view and not interviewing anyone, to, you know, different types of journalism. So through writing, I've actually learned, but I struggle to see that myself. So other people see that for me. And times when I'm feeling stuck or inadequate for projects, which is most of the time, the thought that I didn't study journalism comes up quite a bit. And I think that's why I take up as many online courses as I can, and in-person courses as I can on journalism, to sort of, when the thought comes up, I'm like, oh yeah, I did a course on data journalism. I did a course on solution journalism. I did a course on investigative journalism. So, and that was the advice that my mentor gave, that if you feel inadequate in a particular space, then look for a way you can actually get training on it. So I've been trying to just touch bases, but then sometimes I'm asked to do things in journalism, and I'm like, they should have, I think if I went to journalism school, I've been taught that, because now I have to Google and figure out what is this. And then you realize actually what it is, it's something you know, it's just that you do not really think, you didn't know there's sort of a name for it.
Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, so
I said that was my last question, but you obliged me this very last one. Unfortunately, journalists never run out of questions. Any golden moment to share? Any golden moment to share? These years you have held the pen.
Oh, golden moments. Yes. So the second story I wrote, which was very personal too, I won an award for it. I actually couldn't believe. I still don't believe I actually did. So I think that was the best moment in my life. And then during COVID, I covered quite a bit on what COVID vaccines were, variants, and I have the screenshots of people commenting like, this is really good journalism, teaching people and giving information. And those are some of the really proudest moments, like having audiences actually interact with your work and actually telling you, this is really good. Like, you've actually taught me something, that from this, I'm actually going to take an action. And some of them, we've actually become friends, you know, over time. So of course, winning the award is very good, because you're now being recognized as actually like a journalist, I think. But just having audiences interacting with your work and commenting and actually saying they're actually taking an action because of what you wrote, that makes me, I'm always taking screenshots, and I keep saying I'm going to put them in sort of a picture frame, but I haven't gotten to it. But they're usually really beautiful moments for me. Yeah.
Thanks for this conversation. Truly grateful for your time on PENSDOWN.
Yeah, this is really nice. I know so many people who've been on this, apparently. So many
Oh
people have been
yes,
on this. Yeah,
we
across Africa.
in
Yeah,
fact
a
across the
lot of
world. I've had
yeah.
journalists in 5 out of the 6 continents join me, over 140 as we speak, since we started 2021 November. Yeah, so it's one journalist at a time. We are telling the storyteller's story. You know,
Wow, this is
yeah.
this is beautiful. Honestly, it's amazing, and it's incredible
Like,
how consistent you've been at it. Yeah,
it's not
yeah,
been easy. Sometimes some of the comments, the feedback are they are meant to break you, but we see them as, launch part, and then we move on to greater heights. Thank you
yeah.
very much for
I'm
your
so
time.
glad you're back with this. Thank you so much, and have a good. It must be almost afternoon now.
It's afternoon. It's afternoon.
Okay.
It's
Thank
afternoon.
you so
Right.
much, and
Right.
goodbye.
Right. Okay. Thanks for joining us. This has been Pens Down. Here we talk journalism journeys. If that journalist can speak English, no matter where they are, one day they will show up here. This is what we do. The only one menu show dedicated to putting the CCTV camera behind the scenes and letting you into the inner workings of journalists. They never get to tell you what they go through, but on Pens Down, they drop their pens and then they become the newsmakers. Everything from how they got in up to the challenges that they grapple. Before you hear the news, you enjoy that show or whatever it is. We tell it all here. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back again with another colleague, and we'll still be talking their journalism journey. Bye for now.